welcome to the Purvis Versus podcast. My name is Eric Purvis. I'm an RMT, course creator, continuing education provider, and advocate for evidence-based massage therapy. This episode features Michelle Smith and Monty Churchman, who are massage therapists based in Saskatchewan. We begin our conversation talking about sport massage, and then the focus of our discussion moves to the pros and cons of working in an unregulated province. Thank you for being here, and enjoy this episode. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for listening to another episode of Purvis Versus. Today, we've got two wonderful guests from Saskatchewan. We've got Michelle Smith, who's back for her second episode, and we welcome Monty Churchman. So thanks for you guys for being here today. Just before we get started into our conversation today, which is going to hopefully focus on massage therapy regulation, and what it's going to be like for you. We're going to hear your perspective on what it's like working in an unregulated province like Saskatchewan. I want you guys just to introduce yourself. So go ahead, Michelle.
Thanks, Eric. My name is Michelle Smith, as Eric has mentioned, and I'm a registered massage therapist here in Saskatchewan, working out of Saskatoon. I've been practicing since 2014, also a kinesiologist and exercise physiologist by profession originally, and then I switched into the career of massage therapy after about 15 years doing my kinesiology profession.
Wonderful. And Monty, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
All right, Monty Churchman. I'm from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I started my first practice in October of 1996. So I'm still practicing. That's 27 years later, if I do the math. I've spent pretty much my entire career practicing in Saskatoon, a little bit rurally as well, but I am heavily involved in sport massage, and I also belong to the Canadian Sport Massage Therapists Association. So we're a national organization that also practices the effective use of sport massage therapy for athletes, especially at the COC and IOC level.
Wonderful. Yeah. So with the CSMTA stuff, do you have the full certification? Because I know
I do through the CSMTA have the full certification. So I'm considered a sport fellow.
Nice. Have you had a chance to go to like Olympic Games or trials or Commonwealth or any of that stuff?
That's what I'm building for. Actually, I was just at the Commonwealth Games last year, working Team Canada. So I got a chance to work with a variety of athletes, which was an amazing experience. Prior to that, for the last 7 years, I've been part of the Para Swim Canada group. So I've been working with them since 2015.
Lovely. It's exciting. When I first started practicing, I guess 17 years ago now, I was heavily involved with the CSMTA, and I never did the final certification because the Olympics came to Vancouver at that time, and I was doing all my certification, looking forward to I'm going to do it. I'm going to work at the Olympics, and they didn't actually take anybody, like hardly anyone that was actually part of the CSMTA. They just took their favorite people or just random. It was who you knew.
So as far as your comment there, Eric, I believe that wouldn't have been the CSMTA. That was most likely the VANOC organizing committee that all kind of went to hell in a handbag.
Yes, and I should be. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. I didn't mean to throw the CSMTA under the bus there. It was the VANOC organizing committee that they chose their therapists from. The people that were organizing that kind of took who they wanted, but it was unfortunate because the impression I had been made to believe, and from the people I knew in the CSMTA from my 3 or 4 years involved with them, was that the organizing committees or Sport Canada or whoever would go to them to choose their therapists. And that in this case, it didn't happen. I live in BC at the time. Actually, my dad had a condo right in downtown Vancouver I could have stayed at, so it was like perfect for me to go, and I didn't get the opportunity. So it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, and I just said, you know what? That's okay. I had young kids at the time, and I was like, this is a lot of work. Anyway, so I just left it. Yeah.
Well, further to that, this might be a good time to talk about it because this will tie into our conversation since we're on the topic of sport. So one of the issues that I've had with living in an unregulated province is the fact that there's not that same labor mobility, especially in the sporting world. So as a CSMTA, and we were called sport massage therapists back then, but recently in the last 2.5 years, we've had to change that designation because registered massage therapist was a protected title, and we couldn't use sport massage therapist. So we recently had to change that to sport fellow instead of certified sport massage therapist. So that's a whole can of worms we could get into. But this also affected it in terms of me or any other unregulated province working in another regulated province for this type of games. So I applied, but they wouldn't take me because insurance wouldn't cover me in a regulated province. Different story if I was with a specific team. If I was actually with the Team Canada, the alpine skiing, the team would have covered me in BC to work with them, but I couldn't go as a registered massage therapist or as a sport therapist and work in an unregulated province because of insurance issues.
That's so crazy to me. Even though your education and your experience could be more or the same or more, just because of being from Saskatchewan, you're denied that opportunity.
Yep, 100%. And back then, keep in mind, in 2010, BC still had a 3,300 hour requirement, which they've since dropped. So we weren't considered as peers, or I guess as equals in the regulated provinces.
Wow. And that's that whole hour thing too here. So being in BC myself, it was one of those things that we were kind of told, like, you're the best, you've had more education anyway. So as you're in school, it's kind of like you're kind of inundated with like how much better your education is. And so we all, I say grow up in air quotes, we all kind of grow up as therapists thinking that our education is great because that's what we're told and we're made to believe. But in reality, it's, if you just because you have more hours doesn't mean it's better education. And that's a big issue is I think more education is better, like more education is better than less education. But the hour component too, particularly when a lot of it was really not evidence-based stuff, it was just filler. I don't think it makes you a better therapist. And my experience teaching and meeting therapists from across Canada, it doesn't matter where you're from. You could be from the territories, you could be from BC, you could be from anywhere in between, all the way to Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, and there's fantastic therapists everywhere that have different numbers of hours. It really comes down, I think, to the individual, not the hours of learning that you get. That's my experience.
And sorry, I should let Michelle get in here at some point, but and it's the quality of the hours that you're receiving, right? So like you alluded to earlier, is it filler? Is it quality hours that you're getting? The one exception that we've had, and this has been a difficult thing, and I don't want to get too much into this, but to take sport therapists from Quebec, they're the only province that doesn't have, they have an 1,100 hour program, I believe, and you can build your way up, but their minimum to practice as a massotherapeutique is 400 hours. So for us to take them on, because our basic requirement in the CSMTA is that you have 2,200 hours of education and be a member in good standing with your provincial association. So we've had to really work and finesse how we can get the Quebec therapists to have their hours up or their quality of education up to join the CSMTA. And again, that's a whole other can of worms. We're not here to discuss them in terms of general regulation, but that's just as an aside.
Wow. That's okay. It's great. I like a lot how these conversations sometimes just kind of roll with the punches, so to speak, go from one way to the other. But let's talk about let's talk about regulation, because that was kind of the key thing. And so I think this does play into it, which is great. So thanks for making those points, Monty. But you guys being in Saskatchewan, let's just throw the big question out there: are you pro regulation? Maybe we'll start with you, Michelle, because we haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, perfect. Am I pro regulation? Absolutely. And I'm pro regulation for, what I consider is the right reasons. It's for our public safety and for the reputation of massage therapists in general as a health profession. So yes, I am pro regulation in Saskatchewan.
What about you, Monty?
100%, absolutely. Pro regulation for sure.
As an easy, simple answer. What do you guys think the barrier is to regulation? Like, why is Saskatchewan not regulated?
Well, we are legislated now. We are legislated, but the transition committee between the three associations have to work to set up the college properly before we can actually get the proclamation day for, yes, we're regulated. So we're half to 3/4 of the way there, I guess, if you will.
And do you guys have like is there a date or a timeline where they expect you guys will have that to go through?
I mean, initially, the timeline was going to take 5 years from when the three organizations came together. However, COVID came and went and kind of prolonged that. And I know just from my short-term experience being part of that committee, that was sort of the goal. But then government process takes long, period, no matter what you're doing, and other priorities will come across the desk. So I think we can probably, I'd be happy if we see that within the 5 years, but I'm realistic in saying maybe 7. Monty, what do you think?
Well, I'm ever the optimist. I don't know if this is the time or place to give my history, but I have literally been waiting for 27 years since I was told we were going to be regulated. And I've been fighting along with not fighting, but working towards regulation ever since 1996. So to see it actually get to this stage, it's like, okay, well, don't get the hopes up too much, but I would like to think we would have it done in the next 3 years to finally get our stuff together and have all three associations and the transition committee agree on a proper entrance exam, if you will, or a proper board exam, if you will. So I'm hopeful that they can work together and get that done in the next 3 years.
I have something I'd like you guys to clarify too, just because I would imagine most people don't really know much about it. You have 3 different associations. So there's MTAS, there's NHPC, and what's the third?
Samoda.
Samoda.
CMOTTA, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Yeah, so NHPC and Samoda are not big in BC at all. We only really have 1 association. So you guys have 3. Now, all 3 of these associations need to come together to kind of agree to work towards regulation. How has that process been? Because if I remember correctly from talking with you guys off air, you guys are you, Michelle, and Monty are in different associations. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's correct.
All right. So Michelle, why don't you go first, and then Monty, what association are you part
of? So I'm part of NHPC, and Monty and I had a really great conversation off air to prepare for this. And I learned a huge volume of information about the path to regulation prior to 2015 that Monty shared with me. And it's only been since about 2015 that NHPC has been, quote unquote, at the table. And that was based on the ministry saying, okay, we need to have all of these associations come together, agree on the process in order to go forward. Go forward again, because there's more backstanding history that I was not aware about. So yeah, I mean, it's been 8 years now for NHPC working collaboratively with the other 2 associations to get things to the point where they are today.
And I imagine that's probably each association has their own agenda of how they want things to look. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think one of the significant challenges is that the 2 of the 3 associations do not have what they call a board exam to join their association. Their requirements to be part of the association is being, a graduate of a 2,200-hour massage therapy program, and then your English language competency as well. And then your first aid CPR and criminal background record check. So those are the only requirements needed for 2 of the 3 associations. And then Monty can speak to this, but the 3rd association, MPAS, actually has what they call their board exam. In order to be a member, they have to pass the board exam. And so from my experience, the biggest hurdle has been agreeing upon whether or not current massage therapists can be grandfathered into the college. That was a point of contention. And I know 2 of the 3 associations agreed that yes, the current massage therapists should be grandfathered in without having to challenge a board exam. That's been rectified and settled, and everything is going forward now. And then the other contention was, okay, any new graduates, once the college is struck, any new graduates entering into the college must write an exam, but what does that exam look like, and what are we basing it off? So those have been the primary sticking points. But then also what a lot of therapists don't know is, like, financially, to start an actual physical college takes a lot of money, and nobody knows yet where this magic money is going to come from to create an actual college. So who's giving what to have, you need your college registrar, you need college, other employees to start the process. And you can't just you can't just weigh your hat on the massage therapist paying their college dues or college fees to fund this college. So I think that's also a big question mark that's up in the air right now, is where's the money coming from to actually then see this go forward once the ministry says, yay, okay, we've passed this, but then we still need X amount of millions of dollars, right? So yeah.
It's not a cheap process for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
No.
And maybe we can talk a bit more about that in a minute. I just want, so Monty, you're at MTAS, right? So is MTAS the largest association in Saskatchewan?
Well, now, are you talking in terms of members or in terms of being known, I suppose?
Let's go members. How many members does MTAS have compared to the other ones?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I should have had those facts before. I believe we're around 850 members, somewhere in that neighborhood. But talking with Michelle, she had mentioned to me that they have more than that with NHPC for massage therapists, which I was kind of unaware of. I still thought we were the largest association in Saskatchewan. So the numbers are fairly comparable, fairly even, I suppose. So going back into my history of MTAS, when I joined, there was no MTAS. So I'll give you the recollection as far back as I can go. So I started my schooling in January of 1995. And there was a class just before me 6 months prior. And so that would have been in June of 94. And that was the year that it became mandatory to take a 2-year, 2,200-hour program in Saskatchewan. Prior to that, it was 1,100 hours. So we were one of the group ahead of me and myself were the first ones to take the 2,200-hour program. Now that's Saskatoon. There's a couple of other schools in Regina, so I can't speak to them. I believe they probably would have followed suit as well. So back then there were 3 associations: the SMTA, the Saskatchewan Massage Therapists Association, the LCSP Phys, which is out of England, and the AMTWP. The sorry, hang on. What did I say? Now I'm getting confused. Oh, sorry, the PSRMT, the Provincial Society of Remedial Massage Therapists. So this is the one that I joined because legally you could still work after 1 year. So the requirement is that you could join an association and work after year 1, but you had to be enrolled in year 2 to take that 2,200 hours. So that's what I did. That's why people say, well, how did you start practicing in October of 96 if you weren't done school? That is how I came to start practicing early. So back then there was no board exam except for with the SMTA, you had to write a board exam. So interestingly enough, I stepped up to be on the PSRMT's executive committee because I could be. And a lot of people were going, well, how can you be on the executive if you've only got 1 year in? You're going back to school. And I said, hey, far be it from me to want to step on toes, but I have the same education as you do right now, 1,100 hours. I don't see anybody else stepping up to want to be a part of your executive committee. If you would like to, please go for it, because I've got a 2nd year of school to go. And like they usually do, nobody stepped up. So, oh, you're fine. You go ahead, keep doing it. So the goal back then in that next year of school, as I was on the executive committee, or a member at large, I guess it was called, was how can we get amalgamation? We want to be regulated. Back then in 95, the government said, hey, you three associations, get your shit together, figure it out, because we're not going to put anybody out of work. So get it done. So all three associations worked that year quite a bit to amalgamate. And they amalgamated in, I believe it was December of 1996. So they did the process of amalgamation in 96. And I can't say this for certain, but the very first board exam that came out from MTAS, which was formed in 95, 96, we had to take that first board exam. So I believe we were the first ones that passed an MQE in Saskatchewan to practice. So there's the history that Michelle didn't know before when we talked. And, I think it was not even a year later, there were some people that were unhappy with the board exam process again. And they decided to splinter off all of a sudden again. And that's when the AMTWP, the Association of Holistic Massage Therapists and Practitioners, came in. So all of a sudden we had two associations again. We went, well, this is defeating the purpose of what we were just trying to do. And it sort of splintered off from there again, in terms of another association coming in. And then I think AMTWP ended up around 1992 is when they were formed, and I think they were out of Alberta. So they ended up finding their way into Saskatchewan, and they created another group there.
It's amazing to me how many different associations you guys have had in a small province in a short period of time. There's been numerous ones that have just kind of come and gone.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, you cut me off whenever you want if you've got side questions, but
No,
that's
keep going.
that's the history of our initial amalgamation in Saskatchewan, and how all of a sudden it kind of descended because one set of people didn't like that they didn't pass the board exams, or they didn't like the rules. So they thought, well, we're not going to stop from practicing. You can't put us out of work. So we'll go to another association. And so we were kind of right back at square one, but MTAS had a lot of traction early on and put in a lot of the time and work to get things up and running. And that's where I think the divide always was between MTAS members. And then when NHPC came in, and the thought process was, okay, well, what are you doing? You're not wanting to work towards regulation. This is what we've been pushing for, and this is what we need. And even while Simona wasn't here, it was the RMTA, I think, the Registered Massage Therapists Association of Alberta, which I believe turned into Simona afterwards. So that's some of the background there on that process. And as well, I've been part of the education committee way back when, and we took our exam. And I think this is one of the things that we felt set us apart, was the fact that we weren't just taking the school's word for it, that the students had passed their 2,200-hour exam. There was an independent exam, which we thought was unbiased and an arbitrary exam, if I use the right word there, that we had come together to form so that students coming out would have to challenge a board exam provincially to make us kind of on par with a lot of other healthcare professions. I mean, I believe every other healthcare profession has a national exam that they have to pass, or a provincial exam. So why wouldn't we want one? Why would we just want to take the school's words coming out saying, oh, they're fine, they're competent? That's a very lay person's way of describing it. I don't know if you want to add anything there, Michelle, to that, or if you want me to continue.
No, I think it sounds great. I think it's a good summary of the history and where you're at today. This is just my question and a food for thought. I would like to question the other associations as to why they do not have that competency exam. Right? Just as a thought. But that's for a podcast for another day, and maybe some other guests for you, Eric, to come on as well too.
And I do wonder, Michelle, if it's because MTAS is dedicated only to Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
NHPC is Western.
it's Canadian wide, right? I mean, there's thousands and thousands of members in NHPC represented, but most of them are represented in the unregulated provinces. So you've got Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and I know they had some members down east as well too. So the shift for them also is going to come once these other provinces become regulated as well.
Yeah.
It only makes sense. Sorry, Monty, didn't mean to interrupt. You just the comment you said there, Michelle, about the board exams, and why would an association not want a board exam? And the way I would look at that, and this is just my biased response to that, is that the associations don't really care about the quality of the people that they are regulating per se, because it's a business, right? They need members in order to survive as a business. So putting a board exam in place, if not mandated, would just be a barrier to membership. So it comes down to the therapist. As a therapist, do they want to be a healthcare professional?
Yeah.
Is that their primary focus? And I'm not saying that people that are part of NHPC or SMOTA aren't. I'm saying that, if do you want to take the easy road or do you want to take the hard road, right? Some people will be like, well, I want to prove to myself that I can pass this board exam. So I want to view myself as being at a higher level, maybe of competency or education. Maybe that person is going to go towards MTAS because there's this perception for them. I don't know. Versus the other ones, maybe people are like, well, I know I'm good. Like I don't need to take this unnecessary cost of doing a board exam, so I can still practice and be a member of these associations. And I would assume that is probably the rationale from the associations for doing it that way. I could totally be wrong, and I'd be happy to be wrong.
Well, question for you: if you were to come out to Saskatchewan right now, being in a regulated province, which association would you join and why?
Well, I would join MTAS 100% because it's just Saskatchewan, and that board exam is that perceived extra requirement to be there. Also, I know the people at MTAS. Like I know Lori and I know Jane, and I've known Danelda for a long time, so I've got connections there. The only person I've ever known that's part of NHPC is Michelle, and not that. I not that is a barrier to only knowing one person, but I think just the standards. I think that I know MTAS better. I know what they represent better.
Yeah, but I think so. If we talk about standards, though, like, okay, here's my example, because when I was talking to Monty about why I chose NHPC as my association, I took my schooling in Alberta. I traveled out because, and again, this is my bias, when I reviewed the curriculum of the Saskatchewan schools in 2013, 2014, and saw that all the schools were still teaching hydrotherapy, spa type, and again, no disregard to spa services, but their curriculum had non-evidence-based material. I was like, and again, I'm a different cat because of my prior university background, but I was like, I'm not wasting my time on that. I want to get to the meat and potatoes of massage, anatomy, physiology, all that wonderful stuff, because I know what kind of practitioner I want to be, and I want to be the practitioner considered to be a healthcare provider. So when I was going to school in Alberta, we actually weren't even educated on MTAS as an association, whereas Saskatchewan schools, MTAS always goes in and talks to their students about like them as an association and things like that. So it wasn't even a question for me. It was like, oh, do I go with SMOTA or NHPC? And at that time, SMOTA was just newly reformed. And then it was like, well, I knew of MTAS and I knew they had a board exam, but in my mind, it was my second career choice down the road. And I'm like, I've already finished a degree. I've already written a national competency exam for my exercise physiology credentialing. to hell if I'm going to write another board exam just to say I know what I'm doing, because I have experience and double the education. And so my choice when going with NHPC was because it was just easy. And I didn't feel like people are going to look at me and say, oh, well, you're not MTAS, so you're not at that level or standard of practitioner because you didn't quote unquote write a board exam. Because at the end of the day, the public doesn't know the difference. I've had treatments from all different kinds of therapists who've been in NHPC or been in MTAS, and just because someone writes the board exam doesn't make them a better practitioner.
And
So I think it's quality assurance is what it is.
and having said that, Michelle, I've seen you've treated me. You're excellent. I trust you 100% with my care. And I'm not concerned that you're not part of MTAS whatsoever. But I think you're a bit of an exception though as well, because you have your background in kin. A lot of people coming in don't have the previous background that you have. So I think this ties in with the educational standard. We can touch on this briefly and maybe come back to it later because I got too many hamsters running in the head right now. But the issue I don't think is the schools. Like I don't think NHPC or Samoda go into the schools and do any talks in Saskatchewan like MTAS.
They do now. Oh yeah,
They do.
yeah. When I was involved with a school here in Saskatchewan, yeah, they definitely they did come in. Yeah.
Okay. But so speaking to that, MTAS has always gone in, and to Eric's earlier comment, I think probably the biggest thing that I have been the most firm on is that we have been, MTAS, in my opinion, has been the leader in trying to get regulation since the get-go. And we talked about this too. There's NDAs with the association, so they won't talk about financials or any of the other details. And this could have been one of the barriers. Unless Michelle and I had talked, I wouldn't have known that NHPC had come to the table in 2015. She wouldn't have known that MTAS was doing the bulk of the work from 95 to 2015. And that contributing heavily financially towards lobbying the government. And so now it's been 8 years that NHPC has been helping. So a lot of people have to, I think, swallow their pride and all this other stuff and go, okay, we're all working together now. Even though I used the analogy with Michelle when we were talking, Eric, that I felt like the little red hen. I felt like MTAS members and us were doing, so to speak, all the work and everything, and everybody didn't want to do the work. They just wanted to eat the bread and jump on and share share in the fruits or the spoils of the labor. And that seemed to be more evident because we were so close to regulation in 2015, to the best of my knowledge. And I believe that is when NHPC said, oh, no, we need to actually lobby the government. And they went to the government and said, no. You can't just make MTAS therapists only. You have to make it fair to everybody. And that, I believe, is the timeline of when they came to the table. And so a lot of us were like, okay, another setback in regulation. Why is NHPC doing this? Now, 8 years later, it makes sense because you don't want to put anybody who's got 2,200 hours or has got their remedial massage therapy certificate out of business. And so I think that older generation, myself included, have had to come to terms and go, because I was asked in a survey, and I said, I want to do what's good for the profession of massage therapy. I don't want to do necessarily what's best for an association, because once the college gets set up, Eric, you're right, 100%. The associations will be only there for membership and money and doing what they need to retain members. It's going to be the college that benefits the most, right?
For sure, and that's such a great point. Is that the associations are there for they're there to support the members. So if you have 3 associations, really they're going to be there to whether it's provide courses or advocacy to the public or whatever to basically promote their membership. And they're a business. They need to attract new members. Whereas the college doesn't care about that because everyone's going to have to be a member of the college. Yeah. And the college is, I'm not sure what the dues are going to be. And here in BC, they're like $600 a year for your college. And then your association dues are optional. But those can be another $600 to $700 as well. If you want to be part of that, even if you want to just get insurance, it's still another couple $100 a month. or sorry, not a month, a year, just for like liability and malpractice. So I don't know what's the cost now to be a member of your guys' association? Because it's going to cost people more, I imagine.
Yeah, I think we're 425 GST included.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're about there as well too, in that neck of the woods.
Right. So
Yeah.
now you're gonna have to add probably another $500 or $600 on top of that to a college due, and that's a barrier um to practicing as well, because that's more money out of your pocket.
Or is
Absolutely.
there a barrier though for like, do I have to be part of an association when I'm in the college? No, right? I mean, the purpose of a college is for the public's protection, right? The associations advocate for the massage therapists.
Yeah.
And right now, these associations are trying to do both. How can you advocate for massage therapists and how can you protect the public? Right. So once the college comes, as long as you're a member of the college in good standing, is there going to be a rule that says you have to also belong to your provincial or any massage association?
No, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're part of an association, we would get a lot of advertisements about Eric's courses or other instructors' courses that are coming up. You get a better insurance rate because you get group insurance rate, you get different group benefits. So there are some pros to still being a part of an association. Those are only three I can think off the top of my head.
Yeah, and it really depends on the numbers in your association too, and what the board of directors and the executive director, and what do the members want. And BCR association was we got I don't know, over 3,500 members in our association, and it's about 50% of, there's about 7,000 RMTs in BC, but half of them are in the association, and they do a conference every year, and they do advertising for courses. They've got like a newsletter that goes out. They lobby insurance companies. They work with ICBC, so our provincial auto insurer, WorkSafe BC, so for workplace, like they do that kind of stuff, which is great if you benefit from it. The problem is though, and this is what you see in BC here, and I'm sure it's in other regulated provinces too, is that because the association is the one working for the profession and it's a voluntary membership, all people that are not paying into it still get all the benefits of the work the association does. And that creates a lot of frustration from my observation and conversations I've had with people. I'm like, do you realize that you just getting all these benefits because of the money that your colleagues are putting into it?
Yeah.
And so that's something that may come up in Saskatchewan once you guys get that, is the people deciding on which association to go to, or just pulling out altogether and just being like, I'm just gonna be a part of the college, and because I have to practice, I don't care about the advertising and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and another thing with that is, so in the last 2 years, MTAS has now waived the examination fee that we used to charge, because we know, so it was always a break-even exam, because I've been one of the provincial board examiners off and on for 20 some years, probably, I guess. And we just had a set of board exams here a couple weeks ago, and they're well attended. And so just to go back to that, and I think this will tie in nicely with, are the schools doing what they're supposed to do, and is the government doing with what they're supposed to do with the curriculum and the way it's supposed to be? So we had always been told that our exam was biased. It was one way. And so we worked with the schools. We went into the schools and said, hey, here's your curriculum. This is government mandated curriculum that you're teaching, but are you teaching what we're going to be testing on? Well, what do you think is important? So we talked to all the schools. We had roundtables back when I was more a part of the board back then. We'd have roundtables every year. What's updated? What's different? We're not going to basically give you our exam, but we're going to tell you what is important, that we feel is important to know. And so after many years of having that same exam and too much pushback, we decided, okay, we need to go to a general competency exam. So Lori and some of us exec, and the other exec more so than me, because I wasn't on the exec, I was just a member at large, worked heavily with CMTBC to not replicate, but to do a mock British Columbia exam. How can we best formulate this? And we went through a ton of different things to reformat that exam to make it a general competency exam. And I remember we were part of a pilot project. It was Don Wickstrom back then that was heading it up. And I think Cassandra Exner-Williams was our chief examiner. But we revamped the whole MTAS exam to kind of go with what a regulated provinces exam would look like. I believe that was 2015, I think. 2016 is when we did the revamp. And we met out in Craik, and we had all the Saskatchewan schools come in, and we said, okay, here's what we're thinking, how an actual exam would go, a mock competency exam. And we asked for their feedback, and we got their feedback, and we put that into the exam. And so that's what we currently have as our board exam for the last 8 years. We still get lots of, well, we didn't know you were teaching that. Well, we didn't know we were doing that. And it's like, we've gotten your feedback from the schools over the years. The problem, I believe, lies in the fact that a lot of the schools, because they're paying so low, are only having people that have been out for 2 or 3 years. And back then they had an agreement between all the schools that they would, if I'm right, I hope I am, that no student would instruct for at least 3 years. They would have at least 3 years experience in the field before coming back to the school and instruct. And now some of the schools are coming back after a year, or they've just graduated and they have them teaching. Yeah. So that should be a big part on the college, but on the government to go in and evaluate the curriculum that they're actually teaching.
Actually, so I'm going to interject, Monty, because earlier you had said when you brought the schools together to review the government mandated curriculum, here's a little correction there for you. The government only approves the curriculum. So when I had my experience working at the school that I was working at here, in order to be approved by the Ministry of Post-Secondary Education, private vocational schools here in Saskatchewan, the school as a business, just like your business, submits a proposal for their program, and the school submits the curriculum that the school wants to teach, and then the government reviews everything and makes sure it checks off everything on the assessment list from the ministry, and then the ministry says, okay, your business plan or your school curriculum looks great. But the government doesn't compare it or doesn't look at what are the national standards for massage therapists. The government is looking at it from does it meet the number of hours that the school is advertising it meets? Does it meet the educational criteria that could make it eligible for student loans? So there's nobody at the government saying, oh yes, this curriculum checks all the boxes for a massage therapy school. No, this curriculum checks all the boxes for a program, which happens to be massage therapy. And so the government approves the school's curriculum that the school presents to the government. So it's the schools, as a private business, have full reign to develop whatever curriculum they want for their massage therapy program. And as long as they're following the same curriculum that was submitted to the ministry for approval, then they're okay. So it's actually the school's responsibility to make sure they're doing what is just and what is right in the eyes of our profession. Currently right now, because there's nobody monitoring the schools coming in and saying, hey, wait, why are you guys teaching how to do a mud wrap in a massage therapy program? Where is mud wrap in the evidence-based efficacy protocol for massage therapy? How does that fit in? Well, we've been teaching this because this is how it's been taught for the last 25 years. So I think and again, this is before my time coming into this, but I think it's wonderful that MTAS sat down with all these schools in 2016. However, of that meeting in 2016, how many of those school directors or head instructors are even still teaching, number one? And number two, none of those schools want to share their curriculum. It's very hush-hush, right? And so I can guarantee now, I know of one school in the city who's still teaching very old, outdated information to their students, and no one's policing that, for lack of a better word. So yes, the ministry approves the curriculum because it says that this school can get funding as a private vocational school, and we can give the student loans. It checks those boxes. But nobody except for a college will be actually reviewing the curriculum. And so I think that's the benefit too, when a college comes in, is like, what kind of curriculum are you guys teaching, right? Are you guys teaching what's evidence-based and substantial in today's, healthcare platform? Or are you just teaching hocus pocus, let's throw some mud wrap on their feet and call it massage therapy, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we've come back to this. I think all three of us can agree on this, right? These new grads are only as good as the school they attend. And we need to do a better job of educating potential massage therapists to really dig deep and look at the school's curriculum before they shell out their $20,000-$30,000, but also dig deep and ask, well, who's instructing and how long have they been practicing as a massage therapist, right? And then make your choice, not because it's in your city or not because you can do a hybrid learning model. Look at the curriculum, look at the instructors, and decide from that in order to make sure you're doing the right thing, right? Because nobody else is checking in on that right now currently.
Yeah.
And I was
This is
going to,
another,
oh,
sorry,
sorry,
Eric,
go ahead.
this is another reason why I really enjoy conversing with Michelle. I love how you just articulated that. That was so well said. Thank you for educating me a little bit more. I know we talked about it briefly before, but that's a fantastic explanation. And I would say that that's gives a little more credence to why I'm excited about regulation and why, whether it's the best exam out there, that's why I think MTAS went for the exam, because you don't know what the schools are doing. We're actually looking at protecting the public by having that qualification. So thanks again, Michelle. Appreciate that.
No problem, Monty.
And I just wanted that was great, Michelle, and thank you for saying that. I just wanted to add to that too, because the biggest problem that the profession has, and I get people, I would say weekly, emailing me, and some people hate me for saying this, and some people are like, thanks for saying that, is the biggest problem our profession has is our entry to practice education is shit. It's for the most part, it's not very good across the board, across the country. And a lot of it's outdated. A lot of it is what you said, Michelle, is like, it's just the way things have always been done.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore it gets passed off as truth. And it's this, and my last podcast I released recently with Whitney Lowe, he called it the lineage model of care, which is basically just gets passed on from generation to generation. It's like an oral history, right? It's based on kind of this outdated biomechanical, biomedical way of, looking for dysfunctions and anatomical differences and fixing them. And that's that's how most of the curriculums are done out there. Now, the problem that we have, though, is that, so even in BC and in the regulated provinces, the college is the one that examines based on the curriculum. But the problem is the curriculum sucks. For the most part, it's not very good. The interjurisdictional competency document's very outdated. There's some good stuff in there. There's things in there which gets interpreted to being how a school wants to interpret that information. And then they teach based on that. Right, because if anyone, you guys might be familiar, or some people, listeners might be familiar with the competency document. It's quite vague.
Talking about like the FOM track.
Yeah. It's quite
familiar with it.
Yeah, it's quite vague, right? In some of the stuff, and like it says things in it like, RMTs must learn how to do a postural assessment, but it doesn't tell you whether what the point of it is. It doesn't tell you whether there's validity to it. There's no evidence in it, right? So it's just like, so people are like, oh, well, when I learned how to do a postural assessment using plumb lines, 20 years ago, I'm going to teach people how to do that now, even though also in that same document, it says, a massage therapist must read current research and be evidence-based. Mm-hmm. Those two things contradict each other. So if you're going to be evidence-based, you're going to realize that doing that static postural assessment has no evidence to it.
Well, exactly, right. And that was the conundrum I got into when I was teaching here a couple of years ago. It was like teaching an assessments class. And I'm like, I have to teach you assessments because it's on the curriculum, but we know the validity of these assessments is shit.
Yeah.
So, and how many of you are going to hang a plumb line in your clinic room before you assess somebody? Zero, right?
It doesn't happen, but it's
No.
how the curriculums are often taught. Anyway, so the schools teach this stuff, and then our regulatory college examines based on what these 9 or 10 schools that have in BC are examining. Same thing happens in Ontario, right? Because the schools teach to pass a board exam. It doesn't mean that the board exam is a valid, I'm going to call it defensible document with evidence. It's a representation of what the students are being taught. The government, the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Advanced Education, from my experiences with our college and with our association here, is the government doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right. They're just, like you said, Michelle, I loved how you said that about they're just making sure that it ticks these boxes to be a exam. And so the quality of what the students are taught needs to change, but then the schools then need to go to the college, and maybe it's going to be easier for you guys in Saskatchewan with less people, I don't know, and less schools, but they have to go to they're going to have to go to the college and get together and say, hey, this is what we're teaching. But when you have 9 or 10 different schools all teaching different stuff, or like, how are they going to agree? Like, look how difficult it was for you guys to get 3 associations together to move towards regulation and having a conversation. Yeah. Can you imagine like getting all these different private schools together to talk about, let's come up with a curriculum that's evidence-based, that's within our scope of practice, and let's all work together to build this, and there's no way it's going to happen. No, unless there's an external pressure on them. And I personally, I would like to think that external pressure would be a college, but I don't think the college, that's not their mandate.
No, I don't think they'll do it, because you're not going to take away from a private enterprise and what they're teaching and their proprietary stuff, so to speak, what they're selling that makes them unique. It'd be very difficult, I think.
Oh yeah, and I talk about this and complain about this all the time. Maybe somebody will listen and take charge of doing this, but you guys, have expressed great points from your perspective too about the board exam and the licensing, and the one question that you had submitted to me before, Michelle, to talk about was like, why have a board exam and how do we ensure it's actually relevant?
Yeah. Monty, you have experience with this, because
like, you mean currently with MTAS or with a college?
Well, my answer to all of this is like, the 3 of us just need to create one master school that everyone across Canada attends, and then we know it's relevant and up to date and people are doing the right thing. So we don't need to have this board exam. But let's face it, we're too busy playing soccer and drinking Starbucks and enjoying our own lives to do that. So at the end of the day, right, why have a board exam, and is it relevant if we don't have the quality of education being presented as it relates to that intra-jurisdictional practice document that says, we need to be doing evidence-based massage therapy?
That's a great question. I guess I still look at it as, on one hand, you're 100% right about, okay, what are the schools teaching? Can we control that right now? No. Is it evidence-based or evidence-informed, at least? Okay, is it relevant? I still think we need to have, until we get that college set up and regulated, because we are legislated, mm-hmm. I still think we need to have an MQE exam, because I still think that it holds up the integrity of massage therapists in Saskatchewan, at least. I look at every other healthcare professional in terms of physios or chiros. They all have I don't even know if they have a provincial exam anymore. They have a national exam. But if we're unregulated, I think it still sets us apart and says, hey, we're not going to take what the schools have taught you. And yes, maybe the exam is outdated, even though we thought it was updated because we've worked with regulated provinces on it. I still think it's a necessary component until we get that legislation in.
Yeah. Well, or would you agree it's a necessary component, 100% necessary once the legislation comes through and that becomes part of the college's mandate? Because again, currently, I don't think the public knows or cares if somebody is NHPC or MTAS or SMOTA right now. I don't think they, I value for MTAS that having that exam is important for them as an association, and I respect that. But again, until the public understands why it's important, what does it matter? And I think that's where I think having the college is going to take that up that notch, where the public will then understand the importance of it. Right now, the only reason the public cares is if they're workers' compensation or SGI, because MTAS therapists are the only therapists who have billable rights to direct bill WCB or SGI claims. And that's the only reason the public, quote, air quotes, would care, is if I was in a car accident and my chiro says I need a massage, so they're going to refer me to an MTAS therapist because they can direct bill WCB and SGI, right? I mean, that's just from my experience, because if you look at statistically speaking, and I was the nerd who did this because that's who I am, I actually kind of collaborated with NHPC to say, like, I've talked to a couple clinics in the city who are physio chiro clinics, and I've investigated what % of their billables are actually those third-party insurers like workers' comp and SGI, because there was a significant bias in advertising for massage therapists that it always said MTAS therapist. And when they started investigating their actual clinic income, like maybe 2 to 5% of their income was from those types of clients, and the rest were all private insurance, right? Coverage or out-of-pocket payments. So my goal was to educate the other community, the chiros and the physios, to say, like, there's other massage therapists out here other than MTAS ones too, who are just as competent to work at your clinic. They may not be able to direct bill to WCB and SGI, but as a business perspective, that's only this tiny little part of your business income. So why are you limiting your scope of potential massage therapists in your clinic? So thanks to me, I guess, NHPC has been doing a campaign for the last couple of years out to private practices and clinics saying, hey, we're NHPC and we have massage therapists and we're great practitioners too. And this is what, they can bring to your clinic. And, when you advertise for massage therapists, don't be so biased in saying you want MTAS only. Make sure that you understand that there's other streams of income other than this, right? And I think from my experience working with these other colleagues, the chiros and physios, that's their perception too, is that the only benefit to an MTAS massage therapist is the billables and not necessarily the quality control from the board exam. But I don't perceive that anyone has had those conversations with other healthcare practitioners. And I think there's a misperception out there that it's more about the quality of care versus actually it's just because they're more accessible to bill to those two insurance companies.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with what you've said whatsoever. I think it's just, like I said, I think I've just known the hard work I feel that we've put in right from 96 all the way through, or at least what I've done. And I guess I stand behind it. I guess I believe in it. It's one of those things too that you talk about. It's just like, what do you believe in? Why do you believe it? Okay, well, are our competencies any different? I would suggest that you have a few more competencies in your tool bag than I do based on your kin degree and your rehab stuff that you've done. And it's been amazing. I mean, something you got outside of scope of massage therapy practice, but I guess jumping right now, I'm happy that the NHPC is finally starting to advertise. MTAS has been doing it for years. And I know lots of people are like, I can't believe MTAS is doing that. They're making us sound bad. and I don't know if that was, I guess that's perception. I've always been proud to be MTAS, and that my association's out there advocating for the public, uh, or at least what we think we're advocating for, and bringing a presence and bringing a presence to, massage therapy, or I guess in this case, it would be the association with MTAS members. And I haven't really heard any NHPC or SMOTA stuff being out there, but if they're starting to, I think that's absolutely great that your association's starting to publicly advocate more.
Yeah. And well, and again, looping back to this podcast about how would a regulation impact RMTs. And I think I've said this to you before, Monty, as well, is anything that's out there should be about massage therapists as a profession, period, and not about association A, B, C, or D, right? And so what we do it for the love of our profession, not for we can love and be proud of our association, absolutely. But when you peel back those layers, you and I can have these conversations very respectfully and very humbly, because you and I both love being massage therapists, period. We're a massage therapist, and it doesn't matter what association we belong to or what past background we have. What matters is we love what we do. And as a profession, we want to see this profession be elevated. And so regulation is also going to, in my opinion, and I hope it does, eliminate this great divide between A, B, and C association, so that we can all still be very proud of being massage therapists and still feel connected to our association, because it does a hell of a great job representing massage therapy as a whole, and not just its own slogan and tooting its own horn for its own association, right? And who knows, maybe once the college is here, maybe we're going to see a great shift from all the members of NHPC and SMOTA move into MTAS, because it'll be interesting to see how those associations may or may not crumble with this college. But at the end of the day, the college is going to create that mandate of neutrality, right? And it's going to say you can't advertise this association or that massage therapist with a priority or with a bias over another massage therapist or another association. So it creates equality across the board, which will hopefully harmonize all of the professionals in our province and break down those invisible walls that we've all put up around ourselves, and really help us appreciate each other for the fact that we're all A, human, and B, we're all massage therapists who love our profession.
I love that, Michelle. Yeah, well said. You're very quotable, Michelle. I love it.
Well, thanks.
It's a great thing. One thing I just wanted to say too, just kind of as we wrap up here a little bit, is that, the way I see it from kind of an outside observer is that all the different associations creates an us versus them.
100%. Yep. 100%.
Or we have this, or as in Monty's case with some of the problems with being in the CSMTA, is you have that regulated versus unregulated. It's this constant us versus them, which like you said, it puts up barriers, like these artificial barriers, rather than what we're looking for is we're all professionals, we're all massage therapists, we all want what's best for our clients, our patients, the people that come to see us, and we want what's best for the public as well as what's best for the profession. And when you've got these different associations kind of trying to vie for control and power, I think it negatively impacts the profession in ways, in bigger ways than probably a lot of people maybe don't want to admit, but that's what I would see. Because if you're moving towards regulation, and I think the regulation is where we should all be, like the profession should be regulated in every province. We should have a national standard or national exam that is like the same, and there should be a curriculum that is pretty much the same, and so that way, yeah, we should have a licensing exam of some kind, and hopefully it's evidence-based, and hopefully it's better than it has been. But we do need that regulatory process, and we need the associations to stop fighting with each other or like trying to vie for power, because that us versus them is not helping. I don't think. Yeah.
Nope. And that's great. That's why we're all working together now. and
Yeah.
hopefully getting that out of our minds. At least we're all connected together now, like Michelle said, and we'll truly be all connected once regulation comes in. So I wouldn't be still doing massage therapy after 28 years on this body if I didn't love what I'm doing.
No, that's great, Monty. I appreciate it. I think we should. We had a whole bunch of talking points. I think we've only addressed like a fifth of them. I think we should have you guys back on and do a part two, if you're up for that, and we can kind of expand on this maybe a little bit more or talk about something else.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I've really enjoyed this. Enjoyed listening to you guys talk. I've learned a lot from your experiences. So thanks for sharing those with me and with the audience. I appreciate it a lot.
Sounds good to me. You're welcome. Happy for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks, Monty. It's good to meet you. And thanks again, Michelle.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me again. Look forward to part 2 and 3 and 4, probably.
Thank you for listening to my podcast. Please subscribe so you can be notified of all future episodes. Purvis Versus is now available to watch on YouTube. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it to your favorite social media platforms. If you'd like to connect with me, I can be reached through my website, ericpurvis.com, or send me a DM through either Facebook or Instagram at ericpurvisrmt.